After a while, the party was in full swing. Penn and Gareth watched as people danced by. Bit by bit, a portion of the crew gathered around them. Deg was taste-testing various foods he'd collected, first each one alone and then various combinations. Tunnet was running each through a portable analysis machine and writing notes utterly oblivious to the noise and bustle around them. Thwill found his way to the table with a bit of bread and hopped up next to Gareth.
How you doing, Thwill?
I'm doing...
The poor man was shaking more than normal, but Gareth supposed being here at all was a massive step forward. Penn leaned out and looked over at her fuzzy friend.
You're doing great, Thwill.
Thwill didn't respond, but his ears twitched and his fur puffed up. He nibbled on his bread with perhaps a bit more pride. Deg hopped down from the bench and dusted himself off.
Time to try some Terran dancing. A bit energetic, but I think I can keep up.
Good luck,
Gareth offered.
You give me too little credit,
Deg said as he made his way to a group dancing in pairs that seemed to trade off at intervals. He watched for an opening and hopped into the cycle without missing a step. The humans were much too tall to go through all the motions normally, but wherever height was an issue, they simply made do and went through the motions. No one seemed to be terribly concerned about dancing well so much as enjoying the act. He sailed along a sea of changing faces. The air was thick with breath, and as they passed he noticed the sweat on many. Yet with all the apparent signs of exertion, none slowed or even seemed to notice. They seemed happier for the fatigue. A woman with curly brunette hair partnered with him for a time. She was dressed up in simple handmade bracelets and a crocheted dress. She spun and spun, which made the dress billow and the bracelets clack together. Sweat rolled down glowing bronze skin, and she smiled more with her deep green eyes than she did with her mouth. Deg was certain he'd noticed her dancing when the festivities first started, and here she was still going. Or perhaps she'd rested in between then and now. As they twirled around each other, Deg could feel his body relenting to the physical exertion. It wasn't the movements exactly. He could keep up with their speed and dexterity just fine. But these people just kept going and going and going. He was sure of it. This woman hadn't stopped to rest. She fell into the music when it started and had been dancing along to it this entire time. Finally, he had to relent. Deg managed to continue long enough to make a graceful and well-timed exit, but dragged himself panting back to the table. With a final bit of exertion, he climbed up onto the bench and plopped down exhausted.
Wow,
was all he could manage between breaths.
You dance well, Deg? Looked like you were having fun for the little bit you were out there.
Little bit? What was the saying? Danced till I dropped. Yes, I danced till I damn near dropped.
You were out there for 9 minutes, Deg.
No way. Had to be longer than that.
Tunnet chimed in, because of course they just had to.
9 minutes and 17 seconds, sir.
Well, I still think that's pretty good. It's this planet's atmosphere. Way too thick. Gravity is too high, even with the suit's help.
Oh, yes, I see.
Penn chuckled.
By all means, Penn, you could show us how it's done.
Gareth jabbed.
I think I'm quite
Another voice chimed in from behind her.
I would be happy to take that dance.
She and the rest of the present crew turned to see a slim, tan-skinned man in loose clothing standing there. He was younger than Penn by a few years and shorter by more than a few inches. His hair was short too and well-combed. He wore a disarming smile.
If you would have me?
He finished, holding out his hand. Gareth started.
I think I'd just end up stepping on you, so...
Nonsense. I'm quite deft, you'll see.
His hand remained. Bold, that's for sure.
I don't...
Oh, come on, Penn. No need to get embarrassed. Have fun.
Dig pushed.
See? Your friends know what you need. Cut loose.
The hand sat extended.
Fine.
She relented. She'd been stewing long enough anyway, she supposed. A bit of dancing couldn't hurt.
Really?
Gareth asked, almost astonished. She responded with an upheld finger down the rest of her drink and looked at Gareth.
There, now I'm ready.
She said as she took the man's hand. She hoisted herself up with his help, and the height difference between them became more apparent. There were plenty of humans here who measured up to Penn quite well. The man was just not one of them. Still, as he led them out into a group of people and the two struck up a rhythm, he proved he was not a liar. Penn may have held the height advantage, but the man had the skill advantage,
Relax.
he said as if reading her mind.
We're not enemies. You don't need to analyze me for weaknesses here. Listen to the music, find a flow, let go, and I'll follow.
I've never been too good at this. I'm not built for...
It's not how you're built, hon. It's how damn tense you are. Let it go. You're in your own head, which only makes things worse, no?
Penn took a deep breath and let her shoulders down. He was right. All she could think about was how she might mess up or how it could go wrong, how people would see it go to hell. She had to focus on something. She decided on footwork. It was something she was familiar with already. Maybe not exactly, but close combat had to have some level of transferable skill, right?
Nice. Solid.
He said. She tuned into the music and just followed it, going for simple movements. She didn't worry so much about what her arms were doing. Thankfully, the man helped on that front, taking her hands and moving them with his own, but still allowing her to set the pace. He filled in wherever she needed, and soon enough the knot in Penn's stomach seemed to fade. It was good music, she thought. Her eyes went from her own body to the faces of the people around her. They were all smiles and laughter. The air smelled of sweat, but also cooked meats and bonfire smoke, tree bark and fresh air. It was nice. It was really nice. Gareth sat on the bench and followed Penn's movements through the crowd. He couldn't help but chuckle at the clunky movements, but in time she started to enjoy herself. His smile faded somewhat when he looked over to the man. He was a skilled dancer, but Gareth didn't like him. He wasn't sure what it was precisely. His hair was too well kept, perhaps? Maybe he showed a little too much skin? That open shirt was showing quite a bit of chest. He didn't like the way the man talked either. Gareth came to the conclusion that it was all of it, a number of little things that added up to a general dislike for the person.
I know that look.
Tonette had looked up momentarily.
Such disdain.
No. I just don't know how I feel about the man who asked Penn to dance.
Seemed fine to me.
How could you tell with your attention drowning in your research there? Nothing.
The festival continued on into the early morning. The crew came to a sort of on and off dancing system. They'd join in the fun until tired and then rest a while before going back to it. Eventually, though, they'd all been run ragged and most found themselves simply enjoying the fun from a bench or table. As things wound down, people slowly filtered out of the area. Gareth looked for his friend and found he couldn't locate her. His frills flashed and he was on his feet instantly. He saw Deg deep in conversation with some humans at another table and made his way over.
Dag wears Penn?
I'm not sure. Oh, there's that dancer guy. He might know.
I bet he does.
Gareth was imagining the worst. He knew he'd gotten a bad feeling from the man. Faster than normal Gareth was on him, clothes as loose as ever.
Hey, you, where's Penn?
Whoa, settle down, I think. If I'm misinterpreting the raised voice, my apology.
No, you've got it right. Raised voice equals anger. Now answer my question. What did you do with her?
Nothing. We danced. She got in the groove after a while. We split up and found each other a couple times. Then just a bit ago, she headed out.
Headed out?
You know how it is. Alcohol, too little, and you don't want to dance, or too much, and you can't dance.
Where'd she go?
Back to your ship, I'd assume? Certainly, looked like that direction.
Fine. Bye, thanks.
No problem.
Gareth turned and marched off to the ship. In a few minutes, he was at her door. The door panel did read an occupant inside. He knocked. No answer. Another knock.
Penn?
Still silence. The door was unlocked, but it'd be rude. She was probably fine. But he didn't like not knowing for sure. A few minutes of deliberation passed before he finally just hit the door button and peeked inside. Indeed, there was a pen-shaped mountain curled up in her bed. A different bed now, Gareth noted, much larger and better suited for a human. The next thing he noticed was her hand hung down the side of the bed. She'd been holding something that had now been dropped to the floor. At first, he thought it a data pad, but as he looked closer, he realized it was a pad of paper. A few things connected in his mind. The metal container she guarded so closely was open on the other side of the room. This pad of paper must come from there. He knew he shouldn't snoop, but the allure of the paper was strong. He told himself he'd just turn it over and see what was written on it. So, with a soft step, he was next to it. A simple flip, not even picking it up, just turning it over where it lay, granted him a sight he hadn't expected. He'd figured a journal of some kind, but instead he was met with drawing. A drawing of Daag, to be precise. As he looked it over, he was astonished how realistic it was. It wasn't finished, but the eyes of his captain peered back at him so convincingly Gareth could have mistaken it for a black and white picture.